First of all, I'm very grateful of being here and can speak a little bit about my profession. But I have a problem because I have to talk about myself, not just my profession. When we talk about science dissemination, we are not talking about one career, one way of doing it. We are talking about an incredible amount of different paths that you can follow. You can do podcast, you can do radio, that's quite different. You can write articles, you can write a book, you can give speeches, or maybe stand-up comedy that can be fused with science. So I can't give you tips to do all those things. The only thing that I could say here today is that you should do two things that I think that are quite important and quite fundamental for the science dissemination. First of all, if you want to dedicate yourself to this, you should accept everything at the first. Everything. Even though you think you won't like it or you are afraid because you have never done some of those things, you have never go to a radio, you have never done a video, whatever, you should accept it. Because of two reasons. The first one, you will be trained by that way to do it better. And the other one is that science dissemination, at least in Spain, is not a well-structured way of living. So you will need each euro, each little amount of money that you need, that you can find to be alive. So you have to be an omnivorous. It's like that way. So as I have to talk about myself, the first thing is to start by the beginning. The beginning could be this, also dinosaurs as the last one, but not the beginning of the Mesozoic, is the beginning of my interest in science. As a little kid, I was amazed by dinosaurs, but it was not as any other kid. I was really obsessed. When I have read all the books that I have at home about dinosaurs, I need more, so I asked my parents a dictionary of Greek and a dictionary of Latin to translate each name of dinosaurs that I could find. So I wanted to extract all the information. But I had a problem. Knowing things was not just what I wanted. I wanted to share it with other people. But other people didn't want to listen to me. And that was a struggle for me. I needed to share. It was half of the part of the amusement that I could find in science, to share it with other people. Because you like it a lot. It's what Carl Sagan said about when you're in love, you want to tell everybody. So when you're in love with science, you want to tell everybody that thing. But the problem is that as anyone wanted to learn to listen to me, I had to find other ways of to read science and to fill that void. So I read a lot. I did the degree in medicine, and I didn't found a community that wanted to listen already. So I had a really great problem in that way. But I found then, in the last year of my degree, that's an initiative of the FECIT. It's called FameLab. It's about people that knows about science and want to tell everybody, so they prepare a monologue or a stand-up comedy. That's different way of communicating, and they go to a theater and they speak. That's great. So I tried, I prepared my monologue, I sent it, and I was selected. So at last, a lot of years before I started being attracted to science, I could tell people and people would listen. That's great, because when you try to find a hobby, if you would try to maybe do tennis, you just need the equipment. If you want to write, you need a pencil and a paper. But if you want to tell people something, you need people. A lot of people. And here we could find like 800 people in a theater called La Alhóndiga, because I was selected. And I started by that way to do science dissemination and to find it possible for me. I could do it. So I started finding other ways. Because if you just sit in your home when you have this experience, anybody will call you to keep saying things, to keep doing talks. So you have to move. Then I did this. A little boomer, because it was a blog, and now the people of the generation Z doesn't read blogs and all that, but I tried to do it transmedia. I had a blog, I had a podcast, and I had a YouTube, and I started doing like a mix. It was not the best strategy, but I tried. It was called SD Stendhal. That's my name in media and all those things. But it wasn't all my project. I had more things. I knew that I should appear in places, to talk in places. But if you are new in this, nobody calls you. So what about doing my own events? And I started to searching for places, for bars, for pubs to talk. And here is the night of the science dissemination that we did in Valencia. And I had the speakers and myself. So that way people would know that I was trying to do that way, that career, that profession, and will call me. So was the second strategy. And that's why I started in radio, because this is CV Radio, the program is A Ciencia Cierta, and he is Antonio Rivera, is the leader. He had this program, and I knew about him by the media, and I wanted to come to be a speaker of one of my events. He couldn't, but he looked at my profile and said, "Oh, I think you will be a nice guest for tomorrow. We are talking about Pasteur." Then I prepared about Pasteur. I went there. The first time I was at the radio, and it was quite difficult to overcome all my barriers, my mental problems to go to a radio to expose myself that way. But I liked it a lot. They like it too. So I started going each week to A Ciencia Cierta to talk about different things. And when I had like maybe 100 programs with A Ciencia Cierta of different topics, knowing how to speak in the radio, having learned a lot of things about that, I got a call that they were looking for people to build a section of science in La Razón, a science national newspaper in Spain, and I was one of the candidates. So I had a interview with them. They looked for my job, my articles, everything, and I was selected. So I had to create the section to find people. I accepted to build a section in a national media when I wasn't a journalist, so I had to justify it. I started doing it as science dissemination. That was what I was more or less trained to do. So I said yes. That was the thing that I was saying at the beginning of this talk. I always say yes because you have to learn. There's not academic way of doing this. There are courses and maybe masters of science dissemination, but they're not well formed yet. So I said yes, we started. It started very nice. We have done a lot of things. We have come strong in the newspaper. So now we are not just publishing in the web, we are publishing in the pressed version. So this was almost the last step because I already had to say yes to one more thing. One thing that doesn't have almost anything to do with writing an article, and it's writing a book. So I got another call. They told me that they were looking for a book about neuroscience. That was what I was studying at a master by them. And I said yes. And then I didn't know how to start. Okay, it's the first book. It's the first many things that you have to do to form yourself. I did it. Okay, it was fine. I enjoyed a lot, even though it was with a little frame of time. But the book is selling, so it was a great experience. And one more time, I wasn't prepared for do a book. I didn't. That's a thing that I want to point. I wasn't academically prepared to write a book. But if I say yes to something, I should look and read and prepare by myself autonomously by many different sources that I could find in the internet and the media and people that has already done this job and could tell you tricks. So everything that I've mentioned took me to be more or less known in the community of science dissemination. So I started to have proposals of interviews and all those things like this with BBVA. That was really fine. A long interview of almost 1 hour talking about neuroscience. It's bound to philosophy and other things that I think are quite interesting. So it worked. All the things that I said, all the steps, all the saying yes to many things, trying a lot of things work. And now I have 41,000 followers in Twitter. I start being known. But the fact is that I'm here. to talk to you about all these things. Maybe most of you won't try to leave behind your researcher profession to become science disseminators, but you should know that this is an option, even though if you try to do it per time, you do your research, and at night, because you don't need to sleep, you can start writing or doing podcasts and doing collaborations. And the final part, the conclusion, is that you should switch off the fear, because we all have fear to the media, but it's a temporal fear. If you start to expose yourself to that, you will find it quite different. You will start finding a lot of things, a lot of good things to look for there in the public exposition, in the science dissemination. And one more thing, we are all the time, scientists, begging for pardon for talking about science. We have to find social justifications. People need to know about science. They will be free. Those are things that I have heard, but nobody begs for pardon. We're talking about sports in the media. Why do we need a section of sports in media? Why do we need an art museum? Why do we need, I don't know, maybe a concert? Nobody asks for justifications for that, because they understand that's culture, and science is culture too. We need to put in value science as a way of just having hobby, having a spare time, because you want to know. And science disseminators should be the bound between the complicated world of papers and the hobby time that you can have. So those are the two conclusions that I wanted to say to you. And the last one, because it's a derivation of this last one, is that even though you are researchers, you know about your science, you also can consume science dissemination of other fields. So everybody could be interested in science dissemination. But we have to stop begging for pardon and start doing and listening. So thank you. This is all.